Hello, everybody. We're very grateful to be here at DASA Connect. And today, my colleague and Guido and myself, Sergio, we would like to talk with you about how does a leader enable self-organization within DevOps teams and Jazz. As far as introductions is concerned, let's first just introduce ourselves. Why would you want to listen to us? Guido, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Serge. My name is Guido van der Boom. I'm a partner in Zibia, and I'm responsible for driving our business in Europe currently.
In Europe, yes. As for myself, I am a principal Agile consultant for our Agile consultancy unit. My specialty is large-scale Agile transformations, especially as they pertain to sort of large organizations with all aspects of so product ownership, Scrum Mastership, DevOps, even Sociocratic elements we're putting in nowadays. So that's me. And of course, in the line of our work, we have a lot to do with enabling self-organization. So let's have a talk about that. What we would like to show you is a very simple agenda, actually just 3 points. First, let's talk about what self-organization is. Then we would like to talk about sort of the qualities. What would you need? Just, as if a team is self-organizing, if an organization or a department is self-organizing, what qualities do they have? And talk about that. And of course, then the next step is, so how can a leader make that happen? So those are the 3 things we can talk about. But first things first, of course, Guido, self-organization means no organization, right? It just means chaos. You just let them go. That's what we've seen managers do all the time. You're self-organizing, do it all yourself.
Yeah, so many managers think it's agile DevOps is actually very easy. Yeah. The first time they hear about it, that's nice. So I'm going to give all of the controls to my people, and I don't have to do anything myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the main pitfalls that we see, because it's not that without any guidelines, any guardrails, you can accomplish anything. I think that's a big misconception.
Yeah. So self-organization as a nice excuse for chaos, right?
Well, that's the way to put it. Yeah. And when I started thinking about this, let's say working within frameworks, sort of the concept of freedom within frameworks, I thought about, my passion, which is jazz.
It happens to be jazz.
It happens to be jazz.
Guido happens to be a professional grade jazz pianist, so next to everything else he does. So what's the experience there?
Yeah, so the experience is actually that also with jazz, there's a big misconception with people that if they listen to jazz, they think that whatever happens as some sort of magic thing. It just occurs in the moment without any rules being there whatsoever. But that's not true at all.
Yeah, so randomly people start doing solos. That's also one of the things.
As if, and then it sounds good. Yeah. How is that happening, right? So I brought an example.
Yes, we just had. Surprise, we brought an example.
We brought an example.
Yes, so this is an example of sort of the actual chaos, right?
So this is an example of chaos from the 50s, late 50s, where jazz musicians indeed started experimenting with letting loose of guardrails, of rules actually.
Yeah.
Let's listen to it.
Let's listen to it a bit. Okay, let's go. Here we go. Okay, that's
what I think.
So how interesting.
What do you hear if you hear this?
I think it's the human brain that sort of sees structure there. I mean, it's sort of I heard something like going ting 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 ting, and then I heard something else, but it was a bit all over the place.
It was a bit all over the place because there were no rules. Everybody was just doing whatever she liked to play. Yeah. And by the way, I also noticed it's only 4 members of the band. Yeah. Whereas it seems like it's far more, right?
Yeah.
It's just 4. And there's no key that they play in. There's no rhythm. there are no bars. It's just completely free.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself now, but when you want to make jazz something which is also nice to listen to, and beautiful, and which plays to the senses, and maybe even makes you feel emotional, then you also need to have structure. You need to have bars. You need to have time. You need to have people playing in the right keys. Even with improvisation. So also with improvisation, you cannot say to the bass player, okay, you play in key Y, and the piano player plays in key Z, and then everything is cool. It's not. Everybody needs to play in the same key. So even there are rules. And the next example is one where the rules are definitely.
There are some rules there. Okay, let's have a listen to that just a short bit. Yeah, that sounds structured. Right?
For non-jazz lovers, this is probably still a lot of freedom in it, but there's a lot more structure. And the interesting thing is, I think that what you heard now, Ornette Coleman, one of the greatest of all time.
You told me I'm not a jazz guy, so
yeah. So he made that recording, the last one, before he made the first one that we heard. So somehow these guys, late 50s, said, well, let's just experiment and let's get rid of all structures and see what that brings us. And actually that made him very famous. But quite soon after he did that, he sort of returned to stuff with a bit more structure.
So it was okay. Now let's get back to making actual music. Cool. So I think what's interesting about this, of course, is the lesson is that self-organization does not mean no organization, right? I think for me, what I think also is the nice lesson here is that it's not so much about are there rules, but who provides the rules, who creates them, and did you create, and the nature of your rules. Did they actually enable self-organization, or were they limiting it? And that's, of course, where the magic, sort of the magic sauce is, right? So let's have a talk then about sort of the qualities that are needed for self-organization. Of course, I made some notes here. And the first one, I would say, if we want to enable self-organization and there's a team, and somehow magically, one of the things I always see managers do, they go sort of like this, and they go like, do the self-organization thing, right? You now sort of self-organization, self-directing, and what I've seen happen, and actually I've had it in my own business unit because this was some years ago, sort of being modern, kind of the same way as the example you gave. Let's have all the consultants decide where we're going and where we're headed, etc. And then there was also no heading, and then all the consultants were. And this was the interesting bit. It wasn't that as consultants we couldn't do it, but because it was silently done, there was sort of a vacuum that was pulled. And all of a sudden there was very unclarity, like, okay, but are we allowed to choose for ourselves? What's the overall direction? What should we do? And so just the simple fact of stating that there was a certain level of self-organization allowed was already something that wasn't communicated. So that made it very hard. And so the first thing I would like to discuss is having a common goal. Like, what do we think a common goal is? How does that enable self-organization? Have you ever had that?
Well, I mean, look at what's happening on the football field, right? You're literally, without a goal, nobody knows where to go to, right? So I think it's a great analogy, actually. And also, at the football pitch, you need to have rules. There are boundaries to that football pitch, and then you have guys who are in the front, and guys who are in the back, etc. So without having that goal in place, nobody knows where to go to, basically.
And also, and the interesting thing, especially about self-organization, is sort of the level of self-organization that you allow, right? So it's within the boundary of these rules, and then you can say, well, you're only allowed to walk within a strip of 1 meter wide exactly across the field, or are you allowed to use the whole field, right? Things like that are the defining things that make sort of good self-organization versus sort of very, very bad things.
So like, I think it was before COVID even, I think 4 years ago, I advised one of the CMOs of a telco. And he indeed looked at Agile as the egg of Columbus.
Yeah.
He said, "That's great. So now I can even do less than I already did." And he said to his product managers and marketing managers, "Okay, telco is very simple, right? We need to cross-sell, we need to upsell, and we need to retain customers. That's it.
Yeah.
So go figure it out." And then utter chaos appeared. And I said to him, "Oh, come on! I think you need to, as you said, you need to tell your people what your purpose is.
Yeah.
And also check it with them. Test the waters. Is that purpose also a bit in line with your purpose, and get to some sort of common purpose together." So I prepped him a bit for a meeting. We had the meeting, and he sat, of course, he sat at the
head of the table.
At the head of the table,
as you do,
as you do as a leader.
Yeah.
and he started explaining the purpose, which was, "Guys, telco is very simple, etc." And then he sent everybody out of the room. And afterwards, I went to him and I said, "So, and now you think that everybody, is all fired up and knows, what to do?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, let's see what's going to happen in the next few weeks." And we did, and nothing happened. Chaos all over.
Yeah. So having a good common goal, at least in my experience, one of the things I've seen is this is where the importance of, for instance, a product owner role is super important. Or if you are in a team of teams, the fact that role is there not to tell exactly what everybody needs to be doing, but to say this is who you are together, because you self-organize towards something, right? And so setting that is super important, and that happens at any level. Another thing I've seen that's, and maybe in line of that sort of the theme that we would like to discuss, right? The freedom within those boundaries. It also means that if you look, for instance, at Scrum, it's the fact that there is an event where all the people come together, and we happen to call that the daily Scrum, and then everybody comes together, aligns with each other. This is a self-organization mechanism, but it was an agreed-upon mechanism, right? Everybody said, "Okay, let's do that. Let's make sure we have that daily," and then we talk with each other. So there's a whole bunch of roles, events, artifacts that we set up in place to make sure that that the self-organization is even allowed to happen. And that's, I think, what often people forget, is that you need to put in some extra structure, because if you're going to be replacing a manager who's going to be dictating everybody, something needs to be put in place that replaces those functions. The function of alignment, the function of making sure that there's transparency and clarity of what everybody's doing, and things like that. So have you had a lot of experience with those boundaries as well? Roles, events, artifacts?
Well, I've been in situations where so people were given back control of their own activities, rather than managers telling them what to do, and they didn't do anything anymore because they were afraid to do anything. Because they felt that if they would do something based on their own initiative, they would get smacked in the face. And I really felt for these people. Because it had been like 20-25 years that they had been working in that certain fashion, and now all of a sudden they had all the freedom, but they didn't sort of know how to handle it, and were even afraid to take steps and own initiative. Have you seen that too?
Oh yes, often. And also maybe because, of course, the how can a leader help, maybe good to jump for a short while into the how can a leader help here, because this is truly one of those cases where we can see how leaders can help. This is all about psychological safety in a funny way, right? Of course, when we were sort of pre-discussing this, I already mentioned it. In reading the books of Taichi Ono about the Toyota production system, which, of course, and when I read them at first, I thought, I'm going to read the book of an enlightened leader, and he's going to say many Zen things. And he was, and all the time there's something like, I scolded this person, I scolded that person. I was like, he's not very nice. And then also something else is that sort of this, I got this feeling of I order you to self-organize. And that was really enlightening to me, because we tend to conflate the notion of hierarchy and micromanagement. Hierarchy as a structural mechanism is sort of logical, right? Teams are constructed out of teams, and it becomes a department. That is a natural hierarchy of structure, and that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it. Where it goes wrong, if you're a leader at a higher level and you start to dictate the people who should be self-organizing what to do. And so here I've also found that this happens actually quite a lot, is that there is a weird reverse psychology trick that a leader can use to say, okay, here are sort of the boundaries. This is your purpose. Here are your responsibilities. This is what you're allowed to do. And sort of you agreed them. And then you order them to self-organize and to say, I demand that you organize your own work within these boundaries. I demand that you ask me if it's unclear. And this is really sort of a weird reverse psychology because, and I've seen this happen many times, it worked because the people, because they got the command to self-organize, felt the psychological safety to do so. And then it was, yeah, but I had to self-organize because my boss told me. And it's a sort of a trick, right? It's a psychological safety trick. And then as people got used to it, they got more comfortable in their role. They got more comfortable in taking it. And of course, the leader sort of in that support, as they did the right things, of course, you know, when somebody would come to them and saying, hey, how should I do this? Or overstepping their boundaries a bit, right? And then going like, okay, it shouldn't be something that's bad, but it's simply a trigger for a renegotiation. And go like, okay, does it make sense? How should we do it next time? Things like that. And then people would fall into it. So as far as the how can a leader help, definitely creating psychological safety by having clear wide boundaries initially and sort of doing command self-organize. I found that to be really helpful.
And what do you think about sort of rooting out micromanagement? And I mean, if leaders just continue portraying behaviors of being a micromanager, and nobody is sort of correcting them, what can best be done?
Well, that's interestingly what I found is that comes down to the leadership styles of, for instance, if you look at the product owner role. I've always said that an interesting way to model yourself as sort of a new style leader is to look at the product owner role and the way it manages. The defining thing is that a product owner role only ever states the end goals and never how to get there. It's the what and not the how. And I found that to be a very good model for any leader who does not want to micromanage, because sort of that's by definition what it is, right? I'm only saying, hey, that's where the flag is, that's where the end goal is. By the end of the month, we have to make sure that we can deliver sort of this overall thing. Have fun, go fix. And that also almost by definition makes sure that you're not doing micromanagement because you're allowing people to determine how they organize themselves. And again, I've basically created the boundaries because I've created a clear common goal. To the extent necessary, we've agreed upon sort of what you are, where your boundaries are with respect to your responsibilities. And I've told you now this is your place. I actually expect you to do it. And that's the starting point, right?
We've been talking about examples from our experience. But I think, if we do so, we should also highlight the example, the experience that we had with this great leader who sort of, did everything right. So it's always nice to be at the client where you meet people who also inspire you, right?
Definitely.
Instead of that they call us in and they need our inspiration. Can you tell a little bit about that? About how that, how she behaved? What her behavior was?
What was very interesting is that, again, modeling on this product owner role behavior is that she was extremely clear about where the organization was headed. She was extremely clear, not about the exact structure of the organization. And actually, this was where we helped, right? Again, we were saying, what are the qualities of an organization? Now, in this specific case, it was about a marketing organization that wanted to shift from more a product push orientation to a organized market pull organization, sort of in that sense. And so they had to globally restructure their whole reorganization. And so what we did was this whole self-organized event where people could step into the teams themselves. But as we were constructing and creating the organization, she basically only gave the ground rules for it and not the structure itself. She said it has to it has to be international possible. We have to have a good connection with sales. And there was a bunch of things that were sort of like ground rules. These are things we need for teams to be good and healthy and all those things. We talked about sort of logical maximum sizes, small sizes, things like that. And then there was sort of a first round in sort of negotiation of what are those boundaries really. That was the first round, and everybody sort of the stage was set. it is clear what the goal is. It's clear where the structure is going to be. And with the first round, sort of the places where people could go, that was made clear. And so we had a whole bunch of new teams. And then there was a self-selection mechanism where everybody could just sort of step in and choose their own team. That was pretty amazing. And then in certain cycles and iterations, as they selected themselves, and of course it happened that sometimes 20 people pile onto one team and one team would be empty, so that would be sort of highlighted, and how do we do it. And I think what was amazing about her is that her clarity of direction, her also the amount of safety she produced by sort of, it was so easy to give her feedback or say, hey, how would this go? She was extremely open to that. And it's almost hard to see because it was so natural to her, right? But she really made sure that anytime somebody would have feedback, would be scared or give a counter opinion or whatever, she would seriously listen to them, give maybe her arguments or reasonings for it. And definitely if they said, well, this is a better idea, she would change her opinion and also publicly say, oh yeah, that person changed my opinion.
I think vulnerability, it was sort of one of the key words that that characterizes the way that she operated.
Yeah, it was also and having that strength of character to be a good leader in terms of like, this is the overall direction, and the vulnerability. Maybe humility is also good.
Yeah, humility, but just humanness.
Yeah,
humanness. And you know, you remember at the end of this 2-day workshop where we did this whole self-selection process, she took the stage and she thanked everybody, and she started crying.
Yeah, she became emotional for a while.
She became very emotional, and it sort of affected everybody in the call, and many other people.
Me too.
We became emotional. That
was quite good.
I mean, the human sort of element of what was happening there was it was very profound and deep.
Yeah, and I think and that's also maybe it's soft for many people, but this is a self-organization also very much exists by grace of safety, and if that is sort of that. The way we were discussing it now feels a bit uncomfortable. Still, that bit of setting clear boundaries, wide boundaries, and saying you have the freedom within those to do it are very important.
Yep.
And that's, I think, given the time that we have, also, I think one of the core points also would like to address is to see what we can also take from tools and techniques like sociocracy, right? What's interesting about the notion of sociocracy is that, as it says, the power is in the group. So it's not a leader or a boss or so that has it. And by virtue of that being the case, that way of working has to have techniques and tools and techniques where if we're not each other's boss, we still have to come to an agreement on what our roles and responsibilities are, get clarity, all those other things we were talking about. So this is one of the things I've been taking away from sociocracy, that as an enabler of self-organization, is one of the things you do in sociocracy is agree with each other. So what are exactly our responsibilities amongst each other? And that's also the interesting about true self-organization. It sort of becomes also self-governance in a way, right? In the terms of I have a set of responsibilities, you have a set of responsibilities, and then instead of needing a manager, we have a set of mechanisms that we can agree amongst each other that, hey, maybe it's better that responsibility goes from you to me because it sort of fits my set of responsibilities better, the role I'm playing right now. And so one of the things as far as the tip is concerned is that in sociocracy30.org, there is, if you look on the website, there is also something, they have canvases, and one is called a delegation canvas. And it's a great canvas because within that you can it has all sort of these boxes to hash out what a role or a team needs. It says, what are your responsibilities? What's your purpose? What are the metrics that go with it? There's all sorts of stuff that you define, and then there's a lot of clarity about who you are. And I've used this many, many times nowadays with teams. And then the team is completely clear. And what I've also seen in terms of like enabling self-organization is that if then somebody would come in and try to override them, they could say, no, these are the explicit agreements we all made together, that this is the boundaries, this is the playing field that we have. And so they gained a bit of confidence to do it. What was also good about it is that with two organizations or two teams that were connected with each other, they could also hash it out between each other. So self-organization started happening across the teams even.
Okay, I think we need to wrap up.
We should wrap up indeed. So what we've hoped to help you out with in the past few minutes is talk about self-organization, and as we know, it's just jazz, right?
It's just jazz.
That's really all what it is. We've talked about some of the core qualities that you need for good self-organization. So good common goal, good clarity, and good agreements with each other, and a whole bunch of psychological safety to make that happen. So we hope that with this as a leader, you have some tools to make your teams better at self-organizing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.